Student can just come to the school and take one course and walk away. Like, they don't have to commit to a full, curriculum or 2-year program. If you're interested in just animating cartoons and really wacky animation, just take a course in that. If you want to focus on facial stuff, then you just take a course in that. I don't think there's any other school out there that really lets you, the student, choose whatever it is that you want to do.
We each chose to build a course on a subject matter that we're really passionate about. And we teach something that as individual animators think that it's super important for the students to know. Joe Bowers is a perfect example. His whole course is about the science behind animation. He's always talking about the forces and the movement and how everything's connected. And at the end of it, you result in this course that is so specific to that topic, but you watch it and it's so vital to the learning process for the students.
Ray is kind of a collaborative effort from all of us. He was designed by Ludo, one of our top animators here, and what we kind of liked about his design was that it had a little bit of Japanese influence that we thought was kind of unique. And then we recruited Shannon Thomas, one of our modelers here at DreamWorks, who before modeled some of the Navi for Avatar. All of us here that teach here gave notes on the design and gave notes on the modeling, and we really made sure that this was a full production quality rig.
So the website was designed to be as easy as possible for the students to connect with their instructors and to get all the information they need to actually take the class. At the beginning of the week, they will watch a video, and on that video they get the entire lesson that they're to learn for that week. You have an assignment at the end. You do the assignment all week, then you turn it in for a review at the end of the week, which is a live review with your instructor. You're able to ask questions. It's all recorded. Say if you can't make it one week, you can still get your work reviewed and it'll be uploaded on the site. So within the group page, you'll be able to see the reviews of not just your own work, but everybody's work.
It's pretty incredible that, all instructors at CGTarian all have a very unique style of animation. You take Dave, for example, he comes from a really pushed, exaggerated background. And then there's JP, he's all about subtext and motivation. Thomas brings this complete understanding of animal locomotion to the table. And at CGTarian, we believe that only with the right guidance will you see your dream come true.
We're a group of artists from all areas of the animation industry, from feature animation to visual effects. Some of us came from games and TV. And the cool thing is so many of us have different styles as well, ranging from very realistic to extremely cartoony. So it's very rare that you get such a wide variety of experiences and styles all coming together outside of work for one big project like this.
They're really like these master animators from every discipline, and they're focusing on their own principle. And they're really passionate about what they want to teach. And then I really like the fact that a student can just come to the school and take one course and walk away. Like, they don't have to commit to a full, curriculum or 2-year program. If you're interested in just animating cartoons and really wacky animation, just take a course in that. If you want to focus on facial stuff, then you just take a course in that. I don't think there's any other school out there that really lets you, the student, choose whatever it is that you want to do.
We each chose to build a course on a subject matter that we're really passionate about. And we teach something that as individual animators think that it's super important for the students to know. Joe Bowers is a perfect example. His whole course is about the science behind animation. He's always talking about the forces and the movement and how everything's connected. And at the end of it, you result in this course that is so specific to that topic, but you watch it and it's so vital to the learning process for the students.
Ray is kind of a collaborative effort from all of us. He was designed by Ludo, one of our top animators here, and what we kind of liked about his design was that it had a little bit of Japanese influence that we thought was kind of unique. And then we recruited Shannon Thomas, one of our modelers here at DreamWorks, who before modeled some of the Navi for Avatar. All of us here that teach here gave notes on the design and gave notes on the modeling, and we really made sure that this was a full production quality rig.
So the website was designed to be as easy as possible for the students to connect with their instructors and to get all the information they need to actually take the class. At the beginning of the week, they'll watch a video. And on that video, they get the entire lesson that they're to learn for that week. You have an assignment at the end. You do the assignment all week, then you turn it in for a review at the end of the week, which is a live review with your instructor. You're able to ask questions. It's all recorded. Say if you can't make it one week, you can still get your work reviewed and it'll be uploaded on the site. So within the group page, you'll be able to see the reviews of not just your own work, but everybody's work.
It's pretty incredible that, all instructors at CGTarian all have a very unique style of animation. You take Dave, for example, he comes from a really pushed, exaggerated background. And then there's JP, he's all about subtext and motivation. Thomas brings this complete understanding of animal locomotion to the table. And at CGTarian, we believe that only with the right guidance will you see your dream come true.
We're a group of artists from all areas of the animation industry, from feature animation to visual effects. Some of us came from games and TV. And the cool thing is so many of us have different styles as well, ranging from very realistic to extremely cartoony. So it's very rare that you get such a wide variety of experiences and styles all coming together outside of work for one big project like this.
They're really like these master animators from every discipline, and they're focusing on their own principle. And they're really passionate about what they want to teach. And then I really like the fact that a student can just come to the school and take one course and walk away. Like they don't have to commit to a full, curriculum or 2-year program. If you're interested in just animating cartoons and really wacky animation.
Hey everyone. Welcome to our live Q&A for CGTarian. I'm Kristofer Kordingley. I'm an animator at Disney Animation Studios. Hopefully all the sound's working for you guys. I will confirm that when the stream catches up. There's a little bit of a delay. With YouTube, that's just normal. And I'd like to thank Vadim for helping to set this up, for setting it up actually. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here to answer any questions you guys have. I'll start out by just talking a little bit about where I came from, how I got to where I am today. I grew up in Texas. However, I was born overseas in England. I was there for like 5 months. Then I came to Texas, and I went to school at Ringling College of Art and Design. However, back then it was a school. It was a while ago, before they got bigger. And I studied computer animation there. I asked around a lot back then how to study computer animation, and a lot of people didn't really know. They thought maybe computer science, which was not the way for me, for the actual art, the animation part of it. So that was cool. That was great. I did a little pre-college course there for 1 month, and I really liked it. So I attended Ringling for 4 years, and I made a short film called After You, and it got into the electronic theater that year when I graduated, 2003. And Disney saw that reel, and they asked me to come to work for them. Meet the Robinsons. That was the first movie I worked on at Disney. However, before that, I was at Rhythm and Hughes for 1 year before that, but they are both in Los Angeles. yeah, that's a little bit about myself. Trying to think of anything else that is related to that. Yeah, I guess that's about it. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions about my background. I've been teaching with CGTarian for about 3 years now, I believe, or since it started, and I've been having a great time teaching students. I really love helping you guys out, and just inspiring people, and then students will inspire me too. And when we start discussing animation in a really passionate way, I feel like animating more on my own, which sometimes for me is it's hard to do when I get home, because if you animate all day, it's hard to come back home and do more animation. But once in a while you feel really inspired, and you just have to make art. So I guess I can start off after that by talking a little bit about maybe how I work, how it is at my job. So one of the questions I received was 3 things that I do when I start animating a new shot, and that's a cool question, because I think a lot of people don't they don't really. It's hard to grasp exactly how someone animates, because it's so abstract. I mean, what we're doing in the first place is a very abstract thing to do. We're taking someone else's idea and trying to make it visual in a very high fidelity sort of way. That's one thing I mentioned in my classes, is that in CG, computer animation, there's so much detail. There's harder things about it than traditional animation, and there's easier things about it than traditional animation. But one of the hard things is that there is a lot of detail. And so when you're creating something in such high resolution, you just have to fill in everything. You have to fill in all the blanks. And if you fill it in with just automatic stuff that the computer gives you, you're going to get weird results. The viewer is going to be kind of taken out of the experience a little bit. So when I start a shot, 3 things I do. The first thing, the very required part is to collaborate with your team. And in my case, it's the director of the film and the supervisors, and we talk about where the shot is in the film, and we discuss what has to happen for that shot. It can vary completely. Let's see. Yeah, we talk a lot about the dialogue, the character's personality. If there's music, we talk about how they're singing. We also talk on the side a lot about singing and acting, just to help ourselves as animators as a group. And then we discuss from point A to point B, the character has to go from here to here. Very often there's a physical requirement, how many characters in the shot, things like that. So once I get all the story points down and what has to happen in the shot, I'll go back to my desk and I will think for a long time. Sometimes like half a day or so, and I'll start jotting notes. I will look up some research. Sometimes I will just kind of look on YouTube for inspiration. I will draw a couple thumbnails once in a while, and I'll talk to friends about what they think, other animators and people I work with, and just wrap my head around the shot, and I'll play it back over and over. I'll play it with the previous shot, the next shot, and I'll just think really hard about it. And then after that, once I've kind of got my head wrapped around it, I'll go and shoot reference of myself. If the shot needs reference, that is. Usually I can use reference. If I don't, it's because it's like an impossibly physical shot that someone's maybe flying through the air or falling or hurting themselves in some way that I don't want to shoot reference for. So yeah, I will shoot reference. And shooting reference, you will end up doing a lot of takes to get it right. Unless you're just a really good actor. But I think a lot of us as animators, it's not that we're afraid necessarily of the possibility of acting in front of a camera for like a TV show or a live action film. I mean, some people I don't know how I would feel about that personally. I think it would be kind of exciting, but we as animators we are more comfortable in general to have a quiet space to do our animation reference, and I think that's a pretty important thing. It's kind of a safe place where no one's going to be looking at you weird. I think even at work, if I just need something really quick, I might just do it in the hallway. And I do feel a little bit weird because there's a lot of people in the building and they don't know what I'm doing in that moment, and they just happen to see me doing something strange over and over again in the same way. They probably think I'm kind of crazy, or maybe they're just like, oh, he's just an animator. That's what he does. I don't know if that ever goes to their mind, or they just kind of try to ignore the weird behavior. So without that as a distraction, it's a better place to be if you have a quiet space. So you can focus on your own stuff and not worry about that stuff. So those are the first three things I do when I start a shot. Just to continue, I guess I can just continue that to the end, where I take that reference, I come back to my desk, I look at it all. Sometimes I go back and shoot more reference. Once I'm happy with a reference, I will analyze it, I will study it, I will often load it into my scene, I will retime it, I'll draw on top of it, and I will just make sure it's exactly what I need. And if it's not, then I'll make little minor changes with drawings to help push the idea. And that's something we talk about in my class also, is using a reference to the fullest potential and really analyzing it and understanding what it needs to be for your shot. And then once I do that, I start blocking my shot. Once I'm happy with the timing, once I'm happy with the acting, I'll block my shot out, usually the full body first, and then I'll go into the face. Sometimes I'll do both at the same time. But I'll usually work pose to pose. For very subtle shots, I'll do a lot of straight ahead stuff with kind of splined or auto tangent keys. Otherwise, I'm using stepped keys in blocking phase. And then once we have a blocking pass, we show the director again, we show the supervisors, we get notes, and we just iterate over and over until we get it right. And that's often the hardest part, is to get it right for the film, what the film needs, what the director needs, and what ends up making a better movie. So it's a pretty long process sometimes, and luckily we have kind of a luxury, I would say, at work, where we do get to iterate these things. We do get to work on them over and over. Sometimes it can feel like a burden when you have to restart your shot, but it's really a luxury that you can do that. A lot of productions won't allow that kind of thing, and then you have to live with the fact that it's not perfect, or no one really likes it, but it's there and it's done. But we have this, I don't know, we put so much emphasis on that, the importance of getting it right. So we factor that in, to the pipeline, that we're probably going to restart our shots a couple times. So at least once. So I have some questions already. I'm going to kind of go down the list a little bit and start answering them. So another question I have. Specific to Disney, if I have a free pass to Disneyland, I do have a free pass to Disneyland. If you do work there as an artist, you get a what they call a silver pass, and that gets you into Disneyland, which is nice. What do you most dislike in my profession? Let's see, disliking things. I think let's see. I think I think it's losing work. I don't like losing work. Sometimes the film needs to cut shots out of the movie. Sometimes someone will just have a new idea for something while you're working on it. And while I say it is a luxury to be able to do that, it still feels kind of bad when you lose work. You spend weeks on something, and then it all changes, and you have to kind of like pick yourself back up again. keep going, and having momentum, keeping your momentum up and that energy to just roll with the punches is really important. And when things are cut, that's a big challenge. It's really hard to get that momentum back and that inspiration back. Because when you start animating again, you're wondering, is this even going to be kept in the film? But in those moments, I just have to remind myself, I'm doing this. I'm doing this for a lot of people. I'm doing this for the greater good of the film, and I'm also doing it for myself because I want to make the best possible product in the end. I just just had to mention that because it's something that we all struggle with. I think even though we we do understand that it is very important. The movie needs to be what it needs to be. It's just that's a hard part of it. That and crunch time, like hard schedules, are pretty difficult. Let's see. Just going down the list here. When did you understand that you'll be an animator? I think I felt like I should be an animator towards the end of high school for me. So about when I was probably 17 or 18. And I was going back and forth between a few things. Like I loved music. I loved engineering, at least the concept of engineering. I didn't do any engineering myself, but I was always building things with Legos and stuff. And then I loved computer graphics so much back then. When I was 17, I had a couple pieces of software that I could mess around with. And I think it was the idea of creating a world that I just really I don't know, could imagine anything. I guess that possibility of creating a world to me was really powerful. Video games was a huge influence for me. There was a game called Pilot Wings for the Nintendo 64 that I played a lot, and you could explore the map of Pilot Wings, and it was pretty big, and things would kind of like show up and kind of pop into existence, like a building here and like a tree there. And when you got closer, you would see more resolution, more details would come into focus, and you could discover these cool things. And that to me was really exciting. I think that was probably the biggest inspiration to kind of get into computer graphics. And then I think it was when Dragonheart came out that I was like, this is really cool. I need to figure out how to do this, because that was kind of the first experience of seeing a CG character on screen that was mixed with live action. And it wasn't just like Jurassic Park for me was awesome, and it was a huge inspiration, but I was still kind of weighing the differences between art and science or music. But when Dragonheart came out, because there was this living, breathing, talking, computer-generated dragon, and I thought dragons were really cool back then too. That for some reason, that to me was what I needed to say I really need this. And I think it was because it was so real. And so for a long time, Industrial Light and Magic, that's the company that made the visual effects for Dragonheart. They were where I wanted to be for a long time, until I started seeing things like Toy Story more and A Bug's Life, and I was like, this is all all character. It was all acting. It was all personality, and you don't have to have realistic renders to believe in a character. And that was another big realization for me. So originally, I think the process went like I wanted to work in video games, and then I wanted to work in visual effects, and then I wanted to work in feature animations. And I was very lucky and fortunate enough to be doing that. So I was very inspired. I was very inspired by Pixar in the beginning, and now I'm super inspired by Disney and what they're doing. I've really appreciated being there. I've been at Disney now for probably about 13 years, almost 13 years. So it's been awesome. It gets better every year, and yeah, I really love working on the films there. Let's see. One question was, have I ever done the same job as my character would do in the movie before animating them in order to understand them better? I haven't done that. There's no time for me to actually do a job for a full day or a week. Like if someone is if someone's stocking groceries, there's no real opportunities for that kind of thing. That's a cool idea, though. I really like that idea. But I do try to think that way. If we can, we invite people in to talk about their jobs. Like for Zootopia, for example, we had a police officer come up and talk about that, and that was very interesting to hear. And so that kind of thing is part of the research that is required to make a really good movie. I think a lot of people don't go that extra step, but I've always appreciated that, Pixar and Disney, for feature animation films, they do so much research. And I know DreamWorks and all the major studios do that now, and it's awesome. Maybe they always did, but I think it's really, really useful. And then I'll research my own shot individually, like if there's an action or a certain feeling about it. I'll try to research that also on a kind of micro level. Let's see. What problems have I met while animating? Yeah, there's I did talk about the idea that things get cut, things change, I have to start over. That's a big challenge. Just to keep that feeling of momentum going. Oftentimes at the beginning of a movie, or every time at the beginning of a film, I get really excited to start working. And that's kind of the hardest time because everyone's still figuring out who these characters are. Even though we have the animatic done, the script done, the audio done, it's often very difficult to fully understand who they are when you start to animate them on every frame. You have to fill in all those gaps, and it becomes a lot more questions are raised. Like how does their face move, and what kind of poses? What exactly is their pose, like on the very fine levels, in the minutia, and how does that work in motion? So there's so much you have to fill in. In the beginning of a film, that's when most of the work is redone because we're still kind of experimenting with things. And so you want this momentum, you want this kind of energy to push you through the film. And we play off each other a lot, but when you have to restart your work, that's a big challenge for me. Other problems that can come up are things like technical problems, like computers crashing. And I mentioned like crunch time, kind of handling your schedule, like work-life balance wise. Other problems can include, a lot of technical things. Otherwise, I think the problems are simply creative. Like what do I animate is the biggest problem to solve. Yeah, that's probably the biggest one. Let's see. How do I motivate myself? Yeah, like I said, we play off each other at work. We really try to help each other. A lot of people will see. I think they'll notice that animators tend to stick together a lot, and I think that's totally true. I'm still good friends with a lot of people I went to college with, and I think it's because we went through so much. And animating on the computer, just animating in general, is such a kind of an emotional process where you're putting yourself in your character, and you really want to get it right. And when it's not right, it feels bad. And so we try to help each other, like, with moral support. I think that is huge. And I think that's true with anywhere you work, in any profession. The people you work with they make a huge difference. I'd rather work with great people than work on an amazing project with not great people. I think the people make the difference. Let's see. Do I prefer to animate people or animals? I think I prefer. I mean, it's kind of weird to say. When I first read that question, I was thinking, it's equal. It just depends what they're doing. You know, if a person's doing something boring or an animal's doing something interesting, I'd rather do the animal. But I think in general, that's what this question is getting at, and I think I do kind of prefer to animate people because I'm a person, and it's easier for me to get into that physicality, and I have a much more kind of smooth time animating, and I start to enjoy that process a little more. But animals are super fun too. You know, you can really discover a lot of cool things with animals. But I think the other thing is that with animals, there's often 4 points of contact on the ground. And so that's just a lot more keyframes, a lot more technical stuff that, for me, tends to kind of bog me down a little bit. So that's probably a contributor to why I like to animate people more too. Just 2 feet instead of 4 feet, I guess. Let's see. What was the most exciting experience in my career? I think the most exciting experience for me was, let's see. There's a few, but a big one was when I was able to screen my short film at SIGGRAPH, and way back in 2003, I think, or 2004. That was huge for me because it was something that I put a lot of myself into, and when it was screened in front of people, you know, you start seeing and hearing their reactions. And you know, it was luckily it was a positive reaction, and that's what made it so awesome, was that people liked it, and I think that was huge for me. I think that kind of put an extra kind of spark inside me to want to do more of that and get that feeling again sometime. And it's that for me was. That for me was probably the most exciting thing. You know, there were people commenting in the audience here and there, and I heard people behind me just whispering to themselves about it, and you know, they liked it, and I thought it was just a really cool experience to have that. And I think then after that, it was getting a job, and then, you know, working with people. I was able to get feedback from Glenn Keane when we worked on Tangled. That was hugely exciting for me too. Just watching him helping me on my animation was incredible. Just drawing on top and just like talking through who the character is and what Rapunzel is like. That was amazing. Let's see here, going down the list. What kind of animation do I like? And is it still possible to watch it for entertainment? Totally possible. Yeah, absolutely. I love watching animation for entertainment. Yeah, it's funny, when I go to see the movies, I don't have a hard time getting into the film. A lot of people will say that, oh, because I animate all day, all I'm looking at is the animation when I watch a movie. That doesn't really happen for me. I tend to just enjoy the film. I don't know why. I guess when I'm in that seat, I just get sucked in, and I'm there to be entertained, so I welcome it in, you know. What was that other part of that question? What kind of animation do I like? Let's see. I guess I like all animation. I like generally a good balance of like sophisticated motion with stylization, where there's a sense of realism, where you believe the physics, and there's also a sense of exaggeration. And to pair those two things well is challenging, but when it's done right, it looks really good. And then I also like, you know, on the contrast, I like totally wacky animation. I love Ren and Stimpy stuff. And then I love the more realistic stuff, like Ghost in the Shell. For me, was incredible. The animated feature. I haven't seen the new one, the live action one, but the animation was awesome. Let's see. Just going down the list here, checking out the questions. Okay. So, there's a question here about what does an ordinary workday look like? I think I mentioned that before. It's pretty much how I described it. I'll get to work. I will sit down at my computer. I'll pick up where I left off the next day. However, if I'm starting a new shot, we talk to the directors, we talk to the supervisors, and the supervisors will handle things like who the character is in a very detailed level, like exactly like where their eyebrows should be at a certain time, or exactly what their mouth shape should be. And then it's really about collaborating with the director and the supervisors, and then going back to my desk and trying to figure it out, and then talking to people, getting up and walking around, trying to get ideas, shooting reference, things like that. A lot of computer time, though. Also, a lot of sitting down, especially when I get down to the last half of my shot, when I'm working on finishing it up and polishing things. It's a lot of just focus with my headphones on, listening to music, and just working on the fine details. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So this question asks, do I have free time, and what do I do during my free time? So at work, if there is free time, which sometimes there is between films when we're kind of transitioning from one movie to the next, we will, a lot of things can happen. We will do animation tests. We will try to help the studio in some way. Sometimes we will think of side projects to work on. We'll think of maybe how we can make the space better to work in, better environment, like decoration-wise, and bringing in a juicer or something like that. And then for myself, what I do in my free time, I love the outdoors. I love rock climbing. I love mountain biking. I love what else? I love 3D printing right now. I'm kind of into 3D printing stuff. That's really fun. Just creating something on the computer, having it 3D printed, and holding it in your hand is like kind of crazy. It's awesome, especially for like little characters. Like if you make a character, you can actually print it out. Yeah, basic stuff, I guess. Well, 3D printing is not basic, but it's easy to get into. It's really pretty simple. If you use a service. I use a service called Shapeways. I really like that service. You just upload a file, you get it back in the mail as a real object. So it's really cool. Yeah, otherwise I'm hanging out with friends. Sometimes I'll do a bit of animation. A friend of mine and I did a little bit of animation on our own, just because we wanted to kind of feel that internal kind of drive again for animation. I think when you're at work and you're kind of, you're basically told what to animate in a sense. I mean, you're coming up with the ideas, but it's based on someone else's idea. And so a friend of mine and I, we just wanted to get back into animating for fun, not for work. And that was great. That was awesome. We just collaborated for a couple of days together, and we separated out, and we started working and finishing it up, and we got back together and saw it all come together, and it was really cool to see that. It was a fun experience. Let's see here. Okay, so how much time do I often have to work with an average scene with one character? Cool. So yeah, how long does it take me to animate one character on average? I would say it's about a week. We get about a week to animate one shot. Yeah, it's highly dependent on what's happening and whether you see the whole body or not, or how specific that shot needs to be. Sometimes if there's really detailed acting that has to happen, something very specific, it can take a lot longer because you have to redo it and get it right. But yeah, it's about an average of 1 week per shot for one character, I would say. Let's see here. In in the industry, my first animation job was working at Rhythm and Hughes in Los Angeles. And I got that from a man named Bill Croyer came to Disney to recruit people for the first Garfield movie that came out, and that was an opportunity I'll never forget, and it was amazing. I really loved the people that I worked with. It was back then it was a smaller space. I think they moved to maybe a larger studio after that, but I worked in a small room with five people. There were 5 of us total, and we were kind of cramped in, but it was great. We just like talked about what inspires us, and there was a couple of previously 2D Disney animators there in that same room, and it was awesome just to talk to them. And so yeah, I got that from my demo reel that I had at Ringling, which contained some of the shots that I had in my short film. But one of the shots was an animal. Not from my short film, but one of the shots in my demo reel was an animal. And so that was a big plus for working on Garfield, the first Garfield film. Let's see. So this question asks, is it true that there are 4,000 candidates for animation positions in Disney? I don't know what the numbers are for how many candidates there are for animation. But Disney being such a big company, that wouldn't surprise me. There's often a long list from what I've heard, and that list is kind of it goes through stages where there's an initial kind of look at everyone, and then it gets pared down to a smaller list and a smaller list and a smaller list, until there's a number of us sitting in a room reviewing demo reels together to talk about it. And I think they just kind of pare it down in that way. I'm not super close to that process, but I do know there's a lot of candidates. So it wouldn't surprise me. But don't let that stop you from ever submitting a reel anywhere, because it will get looked at. Your stuff will get looked at. And if you don't hear back any kind of response, that's simply a matter of maybe there are 4,000 candidates, and it's physically impossible to reply to everyone. So that can be a big reason why you might not hear back sometimes. Let's see. This question's cool. What is Disney for me? Is it work or something more? It's definitely something more than work. You spend, I think wherever you work, it should be something more than work. If you can do that. I love my job. I love working at Disney. Like I said, I love the people I work with. They're more than coworkers. They're friends. And I think working on art together is something that's I think it draws you even closer. Especially, like I said, in animation, computer animation, there's so many challenges that we meet together as a team that we just have to morally work together, morally kind of support each other, and so it just becomes kind of ingrained in you in a lot of ways. And I just love how Disney has made people feel over the years, and what their general mission is. It's really cool. What is my recommendation for beginners? That's a good question too. I think it is kind of a general question, so it's hard to really answer in a way that was maybe intended. But if you're a beginner in animation, you want to get into animation. Maybe let's say you've downloaded a piece of software, you're playing around with it, you've created a couple spheres, you're moving them around, you understand that there's a timeline, all that basic stuff. I would say if you want to do something immediate, you can always sign up for an online school like CGTarian. I think that's a great option. It's also much cheaper in general for online schools, and a lot of the teachers will be currently working in the industry. They'll come home from work and they'll teach a class, and that's what I do. I work and then I come home and I teach online with CGTarian. And so it's nice to know that students are getting that kind of feedback from people that are they just, like a few hours ago, were just animating a shot. That to me, I really like that feeling. I like that it's also an affordable option as compared to a brick and mortar school. And I know a lot of schools have gone up in price a lot lately. However, there is something to be said for going to a brick and mortar school also. There's that collaboration you get from other people. There's chance happenings, walking around. There's just a lot of energy there. And so what I like to do in my online class is to try to get people talking together and get people collaborating and just kind of discussing things and inspiring each other, because I think that's a huge part that can help. And so for beginners, I think it's the idea that I would emphasize is to stay motivated. Do what you need to do to stay motivated, and try to be patient with it, because animation is super hard and it takes a long time to get it. So a few more questions came in asking if I can describe the main topics that are covered in my course and which assignments do students get in my class. So some of the main topics I discuss are, keeping the body feeling connected. There's a physicality to the body that, when you move an arm, the whole body is going to move too, and how that reads as a character. Let's see what else. We talk about how to use drawing in a very simple way to take advantage of that for computer animation, because there is a lot that, there's computer animation being so complex, it's easy to get lost in that. It's easy to feel overwhelmed. But when you can rely on drawing again, it kind of hones you back into where you need to be visually. Because drawing is such a 2D skill. I mean, you think in 3D when you draw a lot of the time. But when you're trying to describe like the silhouette or the best sort of, the best shapes, the best action, the best arcs, drawing can really help. And so I talk about drawing in my class too. And some of the assignments include drawing, but a very simple way. It's really not more than drawing lines and circles, and maybe pushing the silhouette and kind of tracing things in a sense to get you started. And then we talk about acting beats, having your character think, what that means, like how timing affects the thought process, and how things read. And with every assignment that we go through, we talk about, how does that read as your character? Like, what does that give your audience? What information are you giving to your audience? And how can we make that more clear? And the idea that I emphasize all the time is what makes things more clear in general. So that's a huge thing. And then we go into drawing a couple times, because it's such an important topic. And then we go into actually starting a piece of animation. So the first I believe it's the first 5 weeks, first 6 weeks, we do exercises, 1 week long exercises. And then for the last half of the class, we do an animation performance test, which takes us through getting reference, shooting reference, analyzing the reference, retiming it, drawing on top, discussing it, and blocking our animation all the way through polishing it. And all throughout that process, we always, we question what's reading, what's effective, how do we make it more clear, things like that. And so, it's structured in a way that you'll have a lot of experience doing short tests, but then you'll have hopefully maybe a demo reel piece at the end that you can use to get a job somewhere. However, being it's an introduction to performance class, so we don't talk about the face, we don't go into that. And so there's more to learn, definitely. I would continue on through CGTarian, through their courses, because there's so much to learn. My class, definitely, my class alone is not enough to get a job in the industry in a really important way, being an introduction to performance. And so hopefully it gets your feet wet in that area. It will give you confidence to kind of try things out on your own. You'll know exactly what to do rather than wonder like what do I animate? How do I get ideas? We look at life. We look at people walking around. We start discussing, like what would make this interesting? What would make this something of a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end? And so we talk about just idea generation in general too, which I think can help you down the line. That was a really good question. Let's see here. Checking out some more questions. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. There's a question about where am I from? When did I start the job at Disney? I think I might have mentioned some of that, but I'll say again. I am originally from England. I grew up in Texas, and I went to school in Florida, and then I got a job at Rhythm and Hue Studios, and then I got a job at Disney. And so I got a job at Disney, I believe it was in 2004. So I've been there for about 13 years now, and it's been great. It gets better every year working there. Let's see. Here's a question about reference. What would I do if I can't find a reference for a shot and I'm not able to make reference for myself for some movements? I will often look online. I'll look on YouTube and I'll try to find inspiration there. That is very important, especially for animals, especially animals you can't just walk around and see, like dogs or cats. They might be in the neighborhood. But for things like elephants or monkeys or things that are just you can only find at the zoo, if you can't get to a zoo to look at those things, then YouTube is a really good resource. And if you just do searches online for other things like just animation reference, there's a lot of websites out there I think that actually specialize in animation reference that I think you can use. I go online very often to find inspiration. Let's see. A question about which character animated by you is my favorite. So which character do I like the most that I animated? It's funny when I think about that. There's a couple aspects to it. I loved animating on Rapunzel. I loved Rapunzel. I think a lot of that was working with Glenn Keane and getting drawovers with him. And then the other side of that is the kind of like, I don't know, there's a real silliness to one of these characters in Wreck-It Ralph. They're called the Devil Dogs. They're little snacks. They're little snack sandwiches with cream filling. And they have, if you look up Devil Dog, Wreck-It Ralph, you'll find what these characters look like. And they're just like little Twinkies with like really thin legs and like tiny feet. And for some reason, those were really fun to animate. And I think the experimentation that allowed me, because they're basically like a pickle shape, and so I could draw like simple lines to block out my animation, and it felt very it felt like it flowed very well, and it was very fun, and they're hilarious to look at. And the fact that they had like really impossibly thin legs was really funny to me. So I don't know, for some reason that one keeps coming up when I get asked that question about what I like to animate the most, which character. So yeah, I don't know. I like silly stuff, I guess, a lot of the time. Let's see. A question about hand-drawn animation. Is it gone, or does it have a future? It's definitely not gone. I think that there's always a place for hand-drawn animation. A lot of it has gone into like Flash kind of stuff that you'll see online, but I think that's just a matter of more people trying it out, because the technology is there. And you can download your own software to learn. like Flash. But I really think that even in computer animation, like I said before, there's a real importance for hand-drawn animation, because that to me is like the foundation of understanding strong posing and silhouettes and really important concepts like that, like appeal, that when you're doing computer animation, you're fighting that all the time because the computer is giving you a lot of information for free, and it's really hard to fight that because the computer's there saying, how about this? You just moved the arm up here. How about that? However, when you're drawing it, you're coming up with the whole pose from scratch with a blank sheet of paper. And if you can think that way while you're doing computer animation, it's hugely beneficial. Especially nowadays when the technology for computer animation is getting better. We are seeing a lot more flexibility in rigs, and you can actually obtain a lot of these kind of silhouettes that look more hand-drawn. And that's a challenge, but it's also, it emphasizes the importance of hand-drawn these days. But I would personally love to see more hand-drawn films in the future. In America, we're not making so many of those these days, but I love it when they do come out. So hopefully, I don't think it'll ever go away. I think there's a real value to hand-drawn animation that you can't find anywhere else. So, what music do I listen to while animating? That's kind of funny. I tend to listen to music that motivates me. It varies a lot. I love all kinds of music. Most of the time I'll listen to electronic music because it's got like a beat that keeps me going and kind of energizes me. Other times I might listen to movie soundtracks. That's really fun, especially like kind of dramatic stuff that also energizes me to animate for a few hours. But sometimes I just like to relax a little bit. So it just kind of varies. Nothing really specific. Usually things with less words in them because they tend to distract me more than just the music itself. So, yeah. Let's see. So it's a tough question, but someone's asking if I could recommend the best cartoon, most perfect animation I can think of that you could study for animators. That's a good question. I think. Let's see. Man, so I personally love Ratatouille. I think there's some incredible animation in that film. There's such subtle stuff that happens and such good character design that it just really, I don't know, it makes it rewatchable so much for me. I'm not sure, maybe it's just because I like the idea of Ratatouille, but those characters, they really work well. And I think there's just a lot to be studied there, especially with Remy, the rat, who's got a lot of squash and stretch. And there's great appeal to what they discovered was important for that character. Being a rat who cooks, has to walk on his hind legs. He doesn't want to put his paws on the ground, and so he kind of keeps his hands in. And that to him is like a character trait that's, I think, really well observed. There's also some really good stuff about staging in that film. Like when Linguini is talking to Colette, who's teaching him how to cook, and she's getting upset with him, but she's also starting to like him. There's a lot of awesome staging that happens in that scene where they start to work together closer and they start to become friends, where you'll see them really far apart from each other, kind of arguing, and then eventually they're kind of side by side looking in the same direction, and that's a really cool thing. It was pointed out on one of the special features that I saw a long time ago. So Ratatouille is great. The Incredibles are great. These are all CG films, but I think Tangled did a really good job with with Glenn Keane on influencing Tangled was monumental, and the way that he drew on top of every frame, not every frame, but he drew on top of probably every shot, at least a little bit, to tweak the appeal of the character. So if you're looking for appeal in CG animation, I think Tangled is a good one to study. And then, you know, traditionally animated films, there's so much. I would just look at Disney. You know, I think Aladdin for me is one of my favorite Disney films. Just the flexibility that they obtained with Aladdin. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot out there, but yeah, just off the top of my head, those are the ones that come to mind. So hopefully that gets you started. Let's see. Okay, a question about if I tried 2D animation, and if so, do you think that a need of drawing skills makes 2D animation harder to learn? Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, I think if you really have a hard time drawing anything, it's going to be hard to do 2D animation. If you want to do 2D animation in a really meaningful way, like work on a film, I think that's a level of craft that I've never obtained myself. And in my classes on CGTarian, I don't expect anyone else to come in with that kind of skill. Even though we do talk about drawing, we use it in a very simple way where we're just drawing lines and circles and like splotches. But I did try 2D animation just in college. I never worked in 2D professionally, so it never really was. I don't know. It never really came up as an opportunity. But because I didn't have the skill already, I never sought it out. So yeah. But yeah, I think draftsmanship is obviously is hugely important for 2D animation. But if you're doing computer animation, you can use just simple lines and circles and things. But if you do have that draftsmanship that, you know, is required of 2D feature films, that's only going to help. So especially if you have a good understanding for appeal and all that stuff that makes a character look really good. Let's see here. So here's a question about other skills. What skills are needed to be an animator in addition to the skills of drawing and knowledge in kinematics? One big skill that I think is not often talked about is collaboration and like working together and receiving feedback and being open to feedback and being patient. I think patience is a really big one for computer animation because it's such a weird art form because you're moving a puppet on the computer and it's kind of, I don't know, it's really not intuitive at all when you're doing that. And I think, yeah, just patience in general is it's a skill, I think, because when you're not used to it, you might not have it. And so I think you can really work at it. So in that case, I call it a skill because it's something you can practice and get better at. So yeah, just stay patient, I'd say. Other things, you know, if you do feel comfortable in front of a camera and you can get into the character's personality, that's a really valuable skill too. Like shooting good reference is really helpful. If you can do that, that's pretty important. Yeah, and then comfort on the computer, technical comfort on the computer. Like if you're, you know, comfortable using a keyboard and mouse, and you're comfortable with the concepts of manipulating things in 3D space, navigating a camera in that 3D space, you know, clicking and dragging on tiny things and moving them around very subtly. That's also a skill that is often overlooked. A lot of times you'll see, you know, a lot of times you'll see people with great 2D animation skills, but when they try to use the computer, it just doesn't translate because of the technical side. It just becomes very cumbersome, and it is. But it's something that I'm used to, having grown up using a computer a lot. I became very, just very used to that. Let's see here. Maybe one more question. Let's see here. Can't see any more here. Okay, so just a question about software that Disney uses. There's software called Marionette, and I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure what Pixar is doing right now, but we do use Maya at Disney, Autodesk Maya, which I've been lucky enough to have studied that in college as well. And I'm glad that CGTarian is using Maya also. I think that's a good starting piece of software, and final piece of software too. It's super powerful. I think that yeah, it's just really good to know. It can do a lot of stuff. It's very overwhelming though if you don't know where to get started. So I would totally recommend taking CGTarian's bootcamp class if you want to get started with some software animating. And then from there, you can move through the courses. You can also try out other pieces of software. But I believe that all the courses at CGTarian use Maya, so all the terminology will be in line with that, and it's kind of an industry standard. However, a lot of companies like Pixar, as you mentioned, use their own proprietary software. Disney has some proprietary stuff too, but the foundation is Maya. So it's definitely good to know if you can learn that. But yeah, that's about all the time we have today. We were scheduled for an hour. It's been about an hour. I really appreciate you guys coming, asking questions. Like I said, I love talking to students. I love talking about animation. Feeling that inspiration, and like things like animation conventions, like CTN, or even just art conventions like or comic conventions like Comic-Con. I love just like, I don't know. There's a never-ending there's a never-ending sort of supply of inspiration out there if you just kind of look for it and talk to each other and give each other moral support and help each other and become friends, because it just drives you forward as an artist in general. So yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks for coming, everyone, and yeah, maybe we'll see you at CGTarian. Maybe if you're already there, we'll see you around. And take care. Hope this was good. See you soon.
We're a group of artists from all areas of the animation industry, from feature animation to visual effects. Some of us came from games and TV. And the cool thing is so many of us have different styles as well, ranging from very realistic to extremely cartoony. So it's very rare that you get such a wide variety of experiences and styles all coming together outside of work for one big project like this.
They're really like these master animators from every discipline, and they're focusing on their own principle, and they're really passionate about what they want to teach. And then I really like the fact that a student can just come to the school and take one course and walk away. Like, they don't have to commit to a full, curriculum or 2-year program. If you're interested in just animating cartoons and really wacky animation, just take a course in that. If you want to focus on